D'Addario's newly redesigned NS Micro headstock tuner is even better than before. It has a wider opening ratchet grip, 360 degrees of adjustment, and a simplified button layout, designed in partnership with Ned Steinberger.
Hey everybody, it's Ted Drozdowski, Senior Editor of Premier Guitar, and I'm here today with Nick Raskulinecz, and we are going to be talking about everything, just everything. He's got a wall of awesomeness here, and even side walls of awesomeness. Guitars, microphones, heads, cabinets, and you all know Nick's work. You've heard his records. He's worked with Alice in Chains, Korn, Hailstorm, a kabillion bands, Mastodon. In fact, I think the first time I ever saw you at work was when I showed up in Franklin and I was doing an interview with Mastodon, and they were cutting one of their records, and you guys were doing guitar tracks that day.
Yeah, we made those
once
more around the sun record.
Yes,
yep.
It was a blast to eavesdrop on that. I had a great time there. But anyway, it's good to see Nick again. And man, where do we start? You know, do you want to talk about the studio first of all? Because they're in Franklin, Tennessee, not too far from here. If you're not familiar with the climes of Nashville, Nick had Rock Falcon Studio. This is the new Rock Falcon Studio.
This is the new, updated, more spacious Rock Falcon down on Music Row. This studio used to be called Ronnie's Place because Ronnie Millsap was in here for a long time, maybe 20 plus years. And I kind of moved in here about 8 months ago, kind of looking for a new spot and some new spaces to record in. And yeah, it's great. I love it.
And over those 8 months, you've worked with who here?
I finished the Hailstorm record. We worked on the Beartooth record. We made the new Korn album. And I'm about to start my new record next week. Yeah.
Awesome.
Never stops.
Awesome. And I imagine that some of these characters were involved in that process.
Yeah, they were all involved in one way or another, yeah. You know, I have a lot of bands that come to me with nothing. They don't bring guitars or amps because they see all my stuff, and you know, if you hire me, you get to use all my stuff. So.
Right. Right. Well, there you go. Right there. There's more validation, as if more was needed. But you know, earlier we were talking about. I guess we'll start with the amps. Does that sound reasonable?
Okay. Yeah.
Well, earlier we were talking about which one you would save if you had to just kind of rescue one, and the one you were kind of leaning toward. Although you know that's a terrible thought, of course. Was this orange over here? Yeah. So why don't we talk about this amp first?
I got this amp from a buddy who got it at a guitar show back in maybe 2000, so 18, 19 years ago. And it's a 68 orange that was originally wrapped in the black Tolex. And it sounds ferocious. It's got a huge sound and a lot of bottom. And I use it primarily as a layering amp. So if we've got the main left and right guitars that are all, you know, big and blown out and distorted, then this guy comes in down the center, much cleaner tone. But really, like, you can really pick out all the notes and the clarity that it provides.
Yeah, so even though it's in a new context, that's the kind of thing that Peter Green was plugged into back in the day.
Yeah. I mean, you have to turn it up so loud to get it to distort that if you just turn it up a little bit, it'll just barely distort, but it adds a clean bottom end to the riffs that just makes the riffs just poke right in your face.
It's great. And to your knowledge, is it all original at this point, or have you?
It had a master volume mod on it when I bought it. So somebody was trying to make it be able to break up, you know, more at lower volumes, but it didn't work.
Okay.
It's a beast. It's so loud.
Well, where do you want to go from there? I mean, you've got these two great Laneys here too. I mean, if we do it chronologically, I guess we can say in the 60s for a while.
Again, I got these from a buddy of mine that used to go to guitar shows in Los Angeles all the time, and he would call me up and be like, "Yo, Nick, there's these Laney clips down here, and you know, this is what they want," and I'd be like, "Cool, get them." And this is a 60 watt, and this is a 100 watt, and I think it's Laney's version of a Marshall Plexi at the time.
Yeah, which is pretty unusual.
Yeah, and they're really, really loud, but they have this clip circuit on them, and they both have it, and it's like a super fuzz, almost like a super fuzz pedal. So you can click that in, and you can add the volume of it into your dry tone, and it just gets really, really blown out, like the band Fu Manchu. It gets like that type of guitar sound. And Sabbath. The story that I heard is Tommy Iommi used these on a couple Sabbath albums, you know, so, but they're great. They're really different. They've got a character unlike any of these other amps.
Yeah, well, they really look beautiful, and I'm sure they sound beautiful as well.
Yeah, they sound great.
Should we go that way
Sure.
and then come back? And
This is a 30 watt high watt, and this was high watt's attempt to make like an AC30 type amp, type head. And this particular model of these 30 watt heads were built by Selmer, because Selmer, high watt changed ownership a bunch of times in the mid 70s and 80s, and the Selmer company made these.
Okay. Now, since it's a Selmer thing, does it have a lot of headroom?
It's got a lot of headroom, and it distorts at a nice low volume. Like, you know, you can see here, you know, the volume is around 1 o'clock and the master volume is around 9 o'clock, and that sounds like a jangly AC30.
Cool.
It's a really cool sounding head.
Cool. Now, what do you have a cabinet you would prefer to run that through typically?
I put them through all these. It's always different. You know, it depends on the vibe of the song and what guitar is being used, and you know, that Marshall basket weave is a great combination with that Laney, because it's not too high gain.
And does that still have 25 watt greenbacks in it?
Yeah, it's got 25 watt greenbacks, so they distort nice and easy.
Cool.
And then like the white Marshall over there has 75s in it.
Okay.
So then you can really open it up. I'd use the orange through the white Marshall.
Well, since we're looking over this way, maybe we should talk about the Marshall over here and also about the Alex Lifeson signature head.
This black Marshall is a 2550, which is a black cased version of a Silver Jubilee that they put out in the late 80s.
Cool.
And you know, the Silver Jubilee is kind of famous because it's the slash head.
Yes.
That's what he used on the early Guns records, and it's just got that amazing tone. And I bought this at a little guitar store in Los Angeles, and I don't even remember the name, because I couldn't afford a Silver Jubilee because they're super expensive and they hadn't been reissued at the time. So I got a lot of these amps in the late 90s, early 2000s, kind of when I was starting my, you know, collection of amps and guitars to use on records, you know, because a lot of dudes in bands don't have a lot of variety. Right. They've got kind of, you know, their touring guitar and their touring amp, and they might have some stuff at home or whatever, but you know, for making records, it's like you get all these sound ideas and you wish you had, you know, an SG and a 2550 and a, you know, a basket weave with 25s in it. So it just kind of helps create all the layers of sound for the guitar. But this is a great head. It sounds great. And then on top of it, when I worked with Rush, we used this head a bunch on the Snakes and Arrows record. And Alex loved it, you know, which I couldn't believe, because I'm like, well, you're Alex Lifeson, you must have thousands of heads. And he didn't.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So we ended up.
He's Alex Lifeson. He
I
must
know,
have thousands of heads.
Sold all their stuff. So we ended up using that head a bunch on the record. And then a year or so later, he came out with, I guess, a Canadian company made a custom Alex head, and they called it Lurkst. And it's kind of a version of this. So it's just another version of a kick-ass sounding Marshall.
Yeah, and kind of another, something else in emulation of the Silver Jubilee.
Yeah, it's just another flavor.
Yep.
You know?
Cool. I know we skipped a couple over there too. Do you want to go to the floor and work our way back, or start? Let's go over here to the Masco.
Okay. The little Masco guy is a little, you know, 8-watt amp.
Yep.
That I found at some music store somewhere.
Now, is that from the 40s? It looks like the kind of thing that would come with a lap steel or something.
Yeah, it's from the
then.
40s, and even if you look at it, it's got like two tubes and a transformer, and a couple wires, and like an 8-inch speaker.
That's awesome.
I don't know if you guys can see that, but it's really cool. It's got, you know, one setting on.
Yeah. And when you crank it all the way up, does it break up like a bulldozer? Yeah.
Or you can do it super clean, low volume, and crank the mic up really loud, and get nice pure tone. And then under the Masco is an 18-watt Marshall, hand-wired Marshall, that actually got a Guitar Center, maybe like 2005, when they reissued their hand-wired series of amps.
Okay.
And it sounds fantastic. Again, one setting, on and all the way up. It sounds fantastic. And underneath it is a 1963 Vox Ac30 that is just the dream. British, clean, Tom Petty, Oasis, you know, every UK band from the 60s sound.
Well, I know when we did the interview for the magazine in, I think it was 2016, you talked about that amp. like a chef describing like some amazing buttery 4-course meal. You know, it was like,
it's like, you know, you plug an ES335 into that amp and turn it up, you know, almost all the way, and it's just pure magic tone. And one of the speakers has been reconed. One of them's all original, and one of them's been reconed. So there's kind of a nice loose, blown out speaker, and then there's a nice tight one.
oh, cool.
So it's cool to mic them both and mix them together, or just pick one of them and go.
Nice.
Yeah. And then this down here is a diesel Herbert that is mind-bending amounts of gain and tone and just sheer sizzle. And I love that amp a lot. And I got I've got a lot of old amps, and recently I kind of took a bunch of old amps that I wasn't really using anymore for whatever reasons, and I traded them for a couple new amps. And I got this Friedman, which is the Steve Stevens model.
Ah, cool.
And it sounds fantastic. And I traded some stuff for that Bogner Ecstasy right there, which, if any of you guys have messed with the Bogner Ecstasy, it's totally insane. You can get 3 or 4 completely different sounds out of that amp. Huh. Everything from just total, you know, modern rock high gain to put it in plexi mode and you're fucking Jimi Hendrix all of a sudden. You know, it sounds fantastic.
Cool. And then you've got this old Supra down here.
Then I've got
60s?
Yeah, this is an old, I believe, 64, 65 Supro that, again, I think I found it in some guitar store, and it sounds great. It's all original, and it looks totally gnarly on the inside.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, look at it.
Yep.
And I think that's a 15, the speaker.
Yes. Yeah. Which allegedly is the speaker that Page used when he was
Yeah.
playing through the...
I mean, this thing sounds insane. Again, kind of like the big orange over there. This orange, not really so much of a main tone per se, but a layering tone. Like, you know, do a track with the Marshall or the Ecstasy or the Friedman, and then double it with that.
Cool. You know, just so people can have a picture in their mind, you mentioned that you recently completed a Korn record, you did a Hailstorm record here. Mm-hmm. Were any of these heads involved, and if so, do you remember which ones might have been used in some of the sessions?
All of these heads. Yeah.
Awesome.
I don't think we used this one on the Korn album.
Okay.
But we used all the rest of these on Korn.
And probably the Diesel too, I would guess.
Oh, yeah. We used all of them.
Awesome.
And on Hailstorm, we used every single one of these.
That's great.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about varied tone, that's perfect.
They all get used.
Tone menu.
Yeah, and they always sound different. You know, it's like if I'm playing a guitar track on a record through any of these combinations, and then you come in and play, it's going to sound, it's that whole thing of everybody plays different. It's going to sound different. It's true, you know, and even though I'm using a lot of the same amps kind of over and over, it's never the same settings.
Well, one thing that you mentioned too is that if somebody comes in and they tend to be a heavy-handed player, you usually have them go up 1 gauge in strings.
Yeah, yep. Whatever they're using, whether it's, you know, 9s, 10s, or 11s. If they use 11s, I try to get them to use 12s.
Yep.
If they use 10s, I try to get them to use 11s. Just to make the guitar a little louder. It sings a little bit more sometimes. Sometimes the instrumentals speak a little bit more, and they'll stay in tune better. Yeah. Especially for the low tuning.
Well, and it's interesting too because then I think that makes it a little more difficult than to rely on your own pat vocabulary too.
Yeah.
You know, if there's a little bit more,
absolutely,
you've got to hit the strings a little bit harder, then you have to kind of think about things.
Yeah.
A little bit different.
You know, it's
you get more engaged.
Yeah, and it's, you know, a lot of guitar players are they're like cats. They love stuff to be their way, and it's got to be their way. Oh my God, I can't play it now. You're gonna be, I got to use 11s instead of 10s. I can't play it. I'm like, well, sure you can. It's the same fucking song.
Yeah.
All the parts the same.
Yep.
It's just gonna be more in tune.
Well, talking about sounds too, again, which is of course what we're doing all the way through, but you brought out one of your favorite mics too. Can we take a look at that?
Yeah, I brought a couple.
That would be killer.
I brought a trusty old Shure SM7. You know, I'm sure everybody out there has probably seen one of these, made famous by Anthony Kiedis, singing in the Blood Sugar Sex Magic video. But, you know, it's primarily a broadcast mic. I mean, it's basically a big SM57. Mm-hmm. It's pretty much all the same elect guts on the inside. It's got a bigger diaphragm, maybe, I think. And it can handle loud guitar. You know, you're forced to give it some space because of the screen.
Yes.
But that space, you know, right on the cloth, and that space really lets some air. You know, I think that's one of the biggest things about recording guitar is just the little bit of space between the microphone and the speaker gives, that little bit of space gives time for the low end to develop.
And I'm assuming you probably put, with these 4x12s and stuff, you probably use at least 2 microphones.
Usually 2, sometimes 3.
Look for speakers that have different character.
Well, it'll be a variety. Like, we might put 2 mics on the Friedman and 3 mics on the Marshall and just 1 on the Wagner.
Yep.
It's always a different combination.
And with the AC30 that has 2 speakers that have different character, probably one on each of those every time.
Exactly. Sometimes we'll put 2 of the same thing on it just to be able to really hear the difference in the speaker. Because all the mics sound different.
Cool.
So this is one of my favorites. And this is also one of my favorites. Oop, this is the wrong one, but I use this too. This is a Neumann U87. And this is great for more medium and low level type recordings. You can't really hammer this too hard. But it's like the AC30 on a cleaner setting at a lower volume. This would sound fantastic. Also the Marshall. Okay, so yeah, this is one of my other all-time favorites. This is probably like my all-time favorite mic.
Awesome.
And this is a U47 FET. And it's, they made these in the 50s and 60s, and it's a FET version of a Tube 47, which is, big famous vocal mic. But these mics can handle so much volume, and they've got such a giant bandwidth that they just sound great in front of guitar cabinets. I mean, you could put it right up on the grill cloth, and it's just pure tone. Great. Most of the time, you don't even need EQ.
Now, when you first started recording, you probably weren't, since that mic's your favorite, I'll focus on it for a second, you probably weren't really aware of that mic. How do you discover it and decide to pursue one of those?
Man, just like everything in this game, when you start doing it, and for me, when I started working at Sound City, I was so lucky to be in a studio that recorded mainly rock albums, which is what I love, and to work with the greatest engineers, Joe Barresi and Jim Scott and Sylvia Massey, and the list goes on, and you take what other people do and you make it your own. I'd never seen a mic like this before. In Knoxville, Tennessee, nobody had U47 FETs or SM7s. I had like 10 SM57s and some EV mic that got dropped in a mud puddle, and I still have it. It's got mud in the screen.
Excellent.
But just like anything, you learn and you hear what's happening and you kind of see those things and you make them your own. I mean, that's kind of how everybody learns how to become an engineer and how to become a producer and work with tones, and you get it in a real world setting when the artist is sitting there going, I want it to sound more like this and more like that, and as the engineer, it's your job to make it happen, to know what combination of guitar and cabinet and pedal and microphone and mic preamp. By the time it gets to the tape and comes out of the speakers, there's like 20 or 30 things involved with that. All the way down to the wire and the kind of pick you're going to use and the gauge of strings and all of that.
And of course the board. And you said you moved your board in here. What kind of board do you have?
We just moved out a 90s SSL 9000, and we moved in my 90s. We took out an old board and added another old board.
Okay.
It's an SSL 6000 that I bought maybe 10 years ago, and I put it in storage till I was able to find my own space. And I used it down at the other Rock Falcon down in Franklin, and we made 14 records on it. And part of coming up to this space was, making sure it was going to work out and it was the right vibe before they, because moving a console is a big deal. I mean, we had to take the fucking glass out, and it's insane in there right now. It took like 12 guys to get that thing in the room. So, for the kind of records I make and what I do, I just prefer that board. My ears like that. What it does for, heavy guitars and bass and drums, it's very pleasing to the ear. It's a good noise, as Geddy Lee would say.
Nice. Well, speaking of good noises, why don't we talk about pedals a little bit before we get to guitars?
Okay.
Because this way we'll just kind of make everybody wait a little. They'll build up the anticipation.
I just brought out a couple things that I've been using, a lot.
Cool. And you are known for having an extreme collection of pedals.
There's a lot of pedals.
I understand you've got a couple hundreds, literally.
There's dudes out there that have way more than I do. That they have the disease, I call it, way worse than I do. But I got a lot, too much.
All right.
One of my favorites is the old faithful, original Tube Screamer.
Yep.
That again, I got at a guitar show back in the 90s, and it was a few $100s. Now they're super insanely expensive, but there's a reason. You can put this pedal on anything, any guitar, between any guitar and any amp, and it just sounds good. It just sounds great. This is a great pedal to put in front of this.
Right.
Crank this head up, put this pedal on there, maybe kick it, you know, this kind of deal. And it just sounds fantastic. It really provides a really pleasing, you know, gain. On the complete polar opposite side of the spectrum is the Boss Hyper Fuzz. This is also one of my all-time favorite pedals. It's the exact opposite of that. That's like a goldfish. This is like a great white shark. You know, that thing just kind of swims through the water and looks cool and whoa, look at the pretty fish.
Yeah.
This thing will bite your fucking face off. You know, and this pedal, especially in front of these old, you know, the old orange and especially these Laney clips, it sounds unreal. You know, there's a song on the Hailstorm record called Skulls, and on the middle section is, I believe it's 8 tracks of guitar with this pedal and that silver head right there. It's just a layer of them, and it's just a wall of distortion. It sounds great. So I love this pedal, and of course they stopped making this.
Right.
So if you guys can ever find one of these, scoop it up. So another one of these pedals that I love, and it's more of an effects pedal, is the Matthews Effect Astronomer. And I totally was like cruising around Instagram one day and saw some guy playing through one of these and was just like, whoa. And it's 2 different reverb engines, and it just adds all kinds of, as the reverb is trailing, it adds all these cool harmonics, and it just sounds amazing. This is also on the Korn album and the Hailstorm album. I just got it recently, so I haven't had time to put it on everything yet, but it will probably get there.
Yeah, good to put it to work fast, though.
And another one of my favorites that a friend turned me onto recently is the Boss Slicer. And it's almost hard to describe what this pedal does. It's kind of like a tremolo. It's like the hardest attacking, just like tremolo you can get, but it changes patterns, and it's got different filter settings, and you can apply different waves to it, and you can program it. It does way more shit than I need it to do, so I hardly know how to use it, but I know how to make it sound like I want. So.
Yep, and there it is.
And it runs on batteries if you want to use it in the woods.
There you go.
And the kind of the last one is the new Electro Harmonix Super Ego, and I like it because it's got a bunch of different effects built into it. It's kind of like 8 pedals in one.
Cool. What's on there?
So it's got a mod, a rotary, 2 different trems, a pitch, which is kind of like a pog type thing.
Oh, nice.
A filter, a phaser, a flanger, a delay, an echo, and a detuner.
Cool.
And you can, you know, blend everything, and how much dry, how much wet, and it's just really good because, you know, in the studio setting you get, you know, 5 or 6 pedals on the floor with a power brick, and there's chords everywhere, and fucking, this kind of eliminates a bunch of that, which is nice.
Cool. And the detuner, does it have sort of a chorus effect?
Yeah, it's kind of like the old...
No one really likes to say chorus anymore because chorus isn't cool, so they have like detune
chorus
functions on things. You know?
I know, you're right. It's called fucking
It's weird.
chorus.
Yeah, it's
That's
a
what
chorus.
It is.
Yeah.
It's like what's the old Roland?
The Space Echo?
No, the Dimension D.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that kind of a
Yeah,
sound.
those are, honestly, I even still like a Boss CE2. You know, there
I
are
love
times
those.
when it works great.
I
you know,
got
just
2
one
of them
that-
over there.
There you
They're
go.
great. That's Head from Korn's go-to pedal.
Oh, well, there you go.
All the knobs, all the way.
Yep. Yep. It's a great sound.
Yeah, it is
It's
a
a
good
lot of
sound.
fun. It's the Cure, you know?
Yeah.
So many great things.
Kurt from Nirvana, he used the same stuff.
Well, are we ready for guitars?
Sure.
Man, I don't know where to start. I'm a little overwhelmed. You know, as like a Gibson fiend, there are all these Les Pauls over there. There's that sweet looking SG.
Okay, so guitar-wise, again, collecting for years and years and years, there's one guitar that I'll start with, and this was the first like good guitar I ever got. This is an 80s Les Paul Standard, and I got this at this little teeny store called Ciderville Music, right outside of Knoxville, Tennessee, in the 80s, and it was the only like authorized Gibson dealer in that part of the state at that time. So me and a buddy of mine drove out there, and they sell banjos and mandolins and stuff. And in the very back of the store was this row of Les Pauls. And I just kind of went down the line and sat and played them all, and this one spoke to me the most, and so I've had it ever since, and this has been on a lot of records. This has been on a ton of records. It's a really nice, mid-rangey, bitey sounding Les Paul.
Cool. Could you just name a couple of the records it's been on?
All my life I've been So, this is that. God. So, another one of my favorites is This is a 72 Black Beauty, and it's kind of the opposite of that standard. So it's drier, has a bigger bottom end, but very tight. It's a little darker sounding, I guess because of the different combinations of wood. It's all original except for the tuners. Somebody before I had it put some really nice tuners on it, and it just sounds great. This is also a go-to guitar that has been on a lot of records.
Yeah, I love the finish. It just looks completely lived on.
It just looks cool, and somebody
Yeah.
smoked like crazy. I mean, this thing has seen some club. Look at that.
Oh, yeah.
Look how smoky
That
it all
yellow.
is.
That is
you
very
know?
yellow.
So that's an awesome one. Another one of my favorites is this all gold Gibson 335. Even the back of it's all gold. I don't think it's a custom shop deal or anything, but I think somebody custom ordered this color. And for whatever reasons, they got rid of it, and I swiped it up. And
what year is that?
I don't actually know. Maybe a 91, maybe? I don't know. They made their numbers too hard to figure it out.
Oh.
Just put the fucking date on there. Right?
I know, yep. And I noticed you've got some felt on the bottom for string dancing
Yeah,
on that one.
to keep it from ringing.
Yep.
Another cool one is this Les Paul baritone.
Oh, nice.
This is an actual like Les Paul standard with the split maple tops, but it's longer scale, and it's an actual baritone guitar. You know, a lot of the bands I record with do super low tuning, you know, and it's easy to keep this thing in tune, and it sounds really good. So this is a nice piece. I also love the BB King Lucille.
Cool.
Which Brent from Mastodon turned me on to these. He had one.
Really?
And this kind of just kicking around the studio, and I started playing it, and I was just like blown away at how the neck feels and the tones you can get out of it, especially with this tone
the baritone,
switch.
those are cool.
It's really great. So another cool part of the arsenal is the white Les Paul Custom SG with the 3 pickups, and it's, you know, 3 very different sounds come out of those pickups, so it's another great one. And then something real quick I'll show you is this is just a Les Paul Jr reissue, and this thing would never stay in tune ever. Great guitar, I love it, it looks cool, but it had the old 54 style wraparound bridge.
Yeah.
So you could barely intonate it, and for making records it was just really hard to keep it in tune. And I ended up putting an Evertune bridge on it, and now it gets used all the time because it's just
Super dependable.
super dependable now.
Yeah. And those old dog ear style pickups are awesome sounding.
Yeah, they sound great. That P90 sounds awesome.
Yeah,
And this
really
guitar was literally sitting in my garage for like 10 years because I
Oh,
was
wow.
just like, oh, I can't use it. It's just, it'll be the home banger.
Yep.
And then I put this on it, and it's been on the last 3 records I made.
Cool. Cool. It's happier being played.
It is. It is. Guitars like to be played.
They do like to be played. They enjoy it. Should we go to the Fender over here?
Yep,
And
this-
sort of transition? to the
This
other side?
is a custom shop 63 Tele reissue. I actually bought this and that little Marshall on the same day at Guitar Center.
Oh, cool.
This was the guitar that I played through it, and it just sounds great. It's like the perfect Tele tone. It sounds fantastic.
Yeah, it's a very pretty classic looking Tele too. The white binding's really nice,
Yeah,
especially on
totally.
the back and sides. It's,
Yep.
It's cool.
And if dudes that love Teles love it, and
Yep.
you know, again, just part of all the different flavors. You know, guitars with single coils, guitars with humbuckers, guitar with P90s. You know, and then over here we've got an Ampeg Dan Armstrong, just the clear plexiglass guitar. They look super cool. You know, Joe Perry used to use them, and Greg Ginn from Black Flag. Definitely the sound of Black Flag. If you played it, you'd know why. And in it, I believe, is their version of a single coil P90 Ampeg pickup. And you can take these pickups out. There's a screw right here, and you can unscrew it, and the pickup will actually slide out. And they make 5 or 6 different kinds of pickups that you can just slide right back in there.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah. Do you have any other pickups?
I
Have you
don't.
ever
I
tried
only
it?
have that one.
Just curious.
The guitar doesn't get used much because it doesn't stay in tune very well. That's why I said if you know Black Flag, then this is the guitar. Everybody thinks he did that on purpose. No. Okay, over here, we'll start with this. This was an anniversary gift from my amazing wife. She totally got me. I wasn't prepared for such an awesome gift because I only got her flowers, and this was a lot cooler than that. And it's an EVH reissue, and it's awesome. It's fun, and it's fast, and it's got a Floyd Rose.
Yep.
And I've been sitting around trying to figure out how to play Hot for Teacher on it. So this is a Lizzie Hale model, Gibson Explorer, that she gave to me as a gift, kind of end of the record. You know, the record's awesome. Here's a kick-ass guitar.
Nice.
And it's great. I mean, it plays great. It sounds great, just right out of the box. Okay. This is a 63 SG. This is the oldest guitar I have. This is like the most vintage. And it's a 63, all original P90 in it. This thing is a monster. This thing sounds huge, especially through the orange or the high watt or the 100 watt high watt I've got back there. This guitar just sounds fantastic. This is all over those Alice in Chains records.
Okay, cool.
Black Gives Way to Blue, Dinosaurs, and the last one we just made. Jerry really likes this guitar a lot. It just sounds great. This guitar, this is a late 70s RD artist. And I took all the electronics out of it and I put 2 Seymour Duncans in it. I put a Duncan distortion in the back and a jazz pickup in the front. Just again, to have different tones.
Yeah, you don't see many of those.
Yeah, this is a great guitar, man. These got overlooked for a really long time because they had this funky, like, Moog compression circuit thing in there that kind of made the guitar not as, you know, hospitable for certain amps and situations as it could be. So I just took all that crap out and, you know, I would say if Batman played guitar, this is what he would play. Just because it looks so cool. But it's a great guitar, and it's got a longer scale, 25 1/4, so it stays in tune really great and nice, and it just looks cool as shit and sounds good too. Last but not least, the straight up off the guitar center wall Flying V. I think this guitar was like $500, and I was making a record with a band called Death Angel, and Rob Cavastani swore by white Vs. Not the black ones, but the white ones.
Okay.
So we went to Guitar Center and had a shootout between a black one and a white one. And I swear the white one sounded more mid-rangey. So I bought it, and it's been on tons of records. It's got a really, really great sound. And it's just a straight up stock Gibson.
Yeah, and it's relatively contemporary.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's just starting to turn yellow a little bit, which is cool looking. So. And then guitar-wise, you know, you can't really see it, but there's another rack back there that has a bunch of miscellaneous. There's a Firebird and a 7-string Gibson Explorer, which helps out with all the low tuning bands.
And I see some basses and a lap steel back over there.
Yeah, there's some basses, and there's a Jim Root Tele, and some acoustic guitars. Yeah, so there's a lot of stuff, you know. It's a lot of variety and kind of any tone you can think of. We've kind of got the bases covered.
Yeah, it does seem like you do. Thank you so much for being with us today and doing this big rundown. It's been great to, you know, get a look at the new Rock Falcon and all this gear. You know, it's just fantastic. So thank you again. Really,
you're welcome.
Truly
Good to see you
appreciate
again.
it. You too.
Thanks.
Hey everybody, thanks for watching the latest rig rundown. Guess what? Every week we upload a brand new rig rundown to premierguitar.com a full week before it's available here on YouTube. So to get your gear fix as soon as humanly possible, go to premierguitar.com/rig rundown. And while you're there, be sure to sign up to get an email notification so you're the first to know as soon as each week's new rig rundown is available. Cheers, see you soon.